So this thing doesn't look a whole lot different from the last time you guys saw it, but I have done some work to it off camera. Starting out with the toe point. I don't think I showed this in the last episode. Cut it out of some 3/8 aluminum plate. And just have it kind of tacked on there. I think it needs to go over that way a smidge. It's not perfectly straight. We also have all of the sheet metal for the hood sitting on it, but it is not welded in place. Now we did do some more welding on the underside. I might have showed you guys that in the last episode, but the important part was I did a crap load of welding to the inside of this thing all the way around. So front to back, this thing is probably about 85% welded. We still need to put on the sponsons and the swim deck, weld out back here, but we're getting close. I'm kind of doing it in big chunks. But while you guys are here, we also built a stomp grate, or at least started to build our stomp grate. So I'll show you guys that later when we flip this thing back over. So to start the video off, I want to go over our plan for the video. I want to get our exhaust done. Jet and pump are already in there. Fuel tank is the big task to start with. Exhaust, I'm waiting on parts. So fuel tank it is. So the original Yamaha Wave Raider had a 14 by 14 by 18 tank. This isn't quite right. There's a little notch taken out of it for the oil tank because this is a 2-stroke, and it originally had a mixing system. You can see the little oil pump on the front of the engine. We're doing away with that, and we're going to we're going to mix our own fuel because that's what you do when you're cool. And I just don't trust the oil pumps. It's an extra thing to fail, blow up your engine, no good. So this is a gigantic plastic tank, and quite frankly, we don't have the room for it. I thought about trying to jam it up in the nose, but meh, why bother? So instead, we're going to put it right here as indicated to my extremely scale drawing. So we're going to do kind of a saddle tank here, and I think I'm going to make this a driver's side operating boat. You kind of really have the option to do either side. I'm going to do driver's side. We'll put the fuel tank over here, so when it's full, you're kind of offsetting your weight. The exhaust will end up over there, so that'll be kind of the lighter side. Well, it won't be the lighter side with my big ass up there. So yeah. So our original tank was 15-ish gallons. Realistically, it's probably closer to like 13 with the chunk taken out of it for the oil can. Our new tank, like I said, is going to sit right in here. And I think we're going to do kind of something like this. It'll be mostly rectangular. It'll end right about here. We have a little cap. Oh, where'd you go? There he is. So the idea is you pull up to the fuel dock. Actually, I won't be able to because I'll have to mix my own gas. So before I put the boat in the water, you'll pop the hood, unscrew your cap, dump in your, hopefully, 12 gallons of fuel. So it's going to be 24 inches long, 8 inches wide, and 14 inches deep total. We're going to have to do a little bit of contouring to the bottom of the boat. So let's go ahead and get to cutting. We are going to build this thing out of this 3/16 aluminum sheet. I just happen to have it around. Way overkill, but it'll never rupture, hopefully. So let's get to cutting. So with our fuel tank pieces cut, we hopped right into tacking them up with the Miller XRA. Went pretty quick, actually. It's really nice when you can cut all the pieces at once and just fit it all together. Since I don't have a brake for that bottom piece there where I made it angled, I ended up just cutting some tabs and folding it over by hand, which I'll have to weld up later. We need some baffles to keep the fuel near our pickup. So our pickup tube will be up here, and we'll pick up fuel somewhere down in this area. We actually need it to be over here so it's on the low spot. So I need to design some baffles that'll let the fuel go back in there, but won't let it rush out of there real quick if I'm doing some quick maneuvering or something like that. So let's go ahead and figure that out. So back here at our carcass of our jet ski, you can see the situation. So these two ports here, one was for the pickup and return tube, which is this. There's just 2 tubes in there. They sit in there and then clamp to that tube. Then we have this guy, which I already pulled out, which is your fuel gauge, actually. Kind of a weird style. A lot different than automotive, but I don't know. We probably don't need a fuel gauge on this build, but we're going to go ahead and use it anyway, or at least set it up so we could use it in the future. So now that we know how the pickup works, let's cut our 2 baffles and also the top of the tank where our sending unit will poke through. Man, I love how to plasma table. Alrighty, took a little while, but we got this thing all welded out. Man, it welded really good. Wish the whole hull would have welded out this well. The biggest issue I have with spool guns, and I've adjusted the run-in time, is whenever you stop and start a weld, you gotta kind of hang out for a second and let the wire heat up before you can get moving. So it leads to a lot of defects. So I just have been running over them, make sure they overlap. But it doesn't matter because this is the inside of the tank. We're gonna weld out the outside. So as long as we stagger where our stops and starts are, hopefully we won't have any issues with this thing leaking. Now, obviously this whole side here, we won't be able to weld. And realistically, I should have left the top off and welded everything. But whatever, we'll just have to do a good job on this seam, especially around the bottom here, to hopefully make sure this thing never leaks. Welding out this tank was a challenge to say the least, but it was a fun challenge. I've never built a complete fuel tank before. I have repaired an old steel one, which I did a video on very early on in the channel. But building one from scratch is a whole nother animal. Man, we got a fuel tank. And it doesn't look half bad. I'll take it. So we have our sending unit bung welded in, which I cut this out of some intercooler piping that I ordered on Amazon, 2.5-inch diameter. Then we have our level check diameter, and then this El Cheapo fuel cap also welded in place. So let's go ahead and stick it in the hull and see. I may have made it too tall. We'll find out in a couple minutes. All right, on the other side here, went ahead and threw in my sending unit. You'll see our lines here are a little tall, but I think I can bend them over. Obviously, this will sink down when I actually have it mounted. So I think we'll have enough room. But to mount the tank, I bought these little rubber guys. They're just molded rubber. So we're going to weld some feet on the bottom and the side of the tank. And I think we may just kind of strap the tank in here with some nice looking straps. And it'll really just sit on the side and the bottom with these. You want the tank, I don't want a solid mount it to the hull. You want it kind of isolated. I don't want this rubbing against the hull, poking a hole in it. So we're getting close though. I think it should work. We just got to be careful how high we raise it using these. All right, when I went ahead and pulled the tank back out, we threw our sending unit and cap in place. And I put a couple PSI of air in it. You can see we get some bubbles, which means some troubles. I've got about 5 so far, so that's not too bad for a full fuel tank. Most of them are just little spots, lack of fusion. Oh well, we'll go ahead and docker them up with the TIG welder probably, and this should be good. So I doctored up the few leaks I had with my TIG torch, and then went ahead and put in some little tabs for some little rubber isolators and put them on pads throughout the boat. So I think it's sitting on 8 of them right now. And then to mount it, we ran a pull strap through underneath our little pieces of square tubing all around. So this baby's in here nice and tight now, but it is completely isolated from the rest of the boat. So I don't have to worry about cracking or anything like that. If the boat hull flexes, I don't want the fuel tank to flex with it. Anyway, our tank is all finished up. I also did a bunch of welding all around here while I was at it. These are ready so we can put our sponsons on finally and our swim deck. That'll be one of the next things. But I think while I'm kind of thinking about it, I want to keep moving forward with accessories. To do that, we're going to throw on our new exhaust manifold. So our new manifold came in the mail, which is of course used. This is off a 1998 Yamaha Superjet. And this manifold works in the opposite of our old manifold. And it's just kind of a little more tight together. This is your, I don't know what you call this, muffler. This is off of another Superjet as well. Both came from the same guy on eBay. So hopefully this will give us the clearance we need to close our hood on our exhaust. Let's get it bolted in there and see. I really hope it does, because I spent $200 on this, and it will actually hurt my performance. It won't help. This is slightly more restrictive than our original stuff. So I really hope this works clearance-wise. Although the Superjet manifold will in fact bolt on, you actually need to open up each hole first, which we're doing here. Just a little annoying. We also should port match this in the future, but I don't have a spare head to kind of base my port matching on, so we'll have to do that in the future to get our performance back. Oh, God, goodness. Well, we get the bulkhead slid back to close to where it needs to be. Right now we're at a 19-inch gap, and our lid is like 18 and a quarter. So this even this won't work. We need to come back another ½ inch or so, I believe. And it is flush on the seat. Definitely good height-wise, so that's good. So we're not at a complete fail, but not ideal as I was hoping. We got a couple options. So the front end of the boat is set up exactly how it will be in real life. There's a lot of space in here. Originally, I was thinking I would just sit right on this. I'm now wondering maybe if I build a seat and there could be a little bit of an air gap in the seat and we can cut a clearance hole here. That thing is probably going to be hot. I mean, it is water cooled, so it shouldn't be as hot as like a manifold, or like a car or a header. But I imagine it still gets warm. So I don't know. We're going to do a little thinking on how to set the exhaust up. But it is nice. This one does exit right there. And then our water box thing is right here. So we just need to get some sort of hose situation to go from there down to there. Then it'll dump out here. And I think our outlet will be about there. So it's looking like it'll work. It's just not perfect. So while I decided on how to build the manifold mount, I decided to move on to welding the back of the sponsons up here, which I found in general on a big project like this, if I hit a spot where I don't really know how I want to proceed, just do something else that needs to be done, because there's always something to be done on a big project. Figured while we're in the mood for tacking stuff up, we might as well try and attack this nose here, which is not going to be easy because in the first episode I royally screwed up fitting this whole boat together, and our front nose isn't quite the shape it's supposed to be. So we already trimmed this down a lot and should be able to make it work, but it's going to take a little bit of work, that's for sure. Hey, that actually worked out really well. We got a really good fit up, even though I had to trim this with an angle grinder. A little bit of a gap up front here. Don't worry about that. Which actually, if I cut this tack and knock that down, I bet I can close that up a good deal. And then, of course, these gaps back here, but that shouldn't be a big deal at all. Sweet. I'm losing my voice. I'm getting ready to have a cold. I can feel it. But, yeah, finally got that on there. I've been kind of putting that off for a while now. Don't know why. It wasn't too bad. And that prediction about having a cold was quite right. I was taken out for about a week, but we came back refreshed and ready to start making our little muffler mount, or bread box mount, whatever you want to call it. So we designed one up and threw it on the table. All right, well, our bread box here is all mounted in. So we cut a bracket to go under the original engine hook bracket. This is the original bread box to the Wave Raider, which has a different name that I don't know. So you can see we got a little 3/16 plate under there, and then we cut a 3/16 plate to weld to that to hold this. And then there's a trick little bracket down there that's grabbing the other two mounts from the original header or whatever, and that all ties in. So it should be pretty strong. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out of there and weld it all up, because I think that's going to be what it's going to be. There's really no good way to change the position of this, because although this looks flexible, it's almost tempting to like try and twist it like that. It's not, because there's still a solid piece of steel in there. It's just an outer elbow. I think that's for the water. The inner one's for the exhaust. Yeah, let's get that welded all up and we can call that little project done and figure out where our water can or whatever goes. All right, back here in the waterlogged hull, I'm pretty sure it sat right in there. So there's two little straps in here with kind of some turnbuckles that look like they would be quite handy to have. It looks like a little bit of a treat to get out of there. So we'll come back here with some sockets and see if we can save those pieces. So now that we harvested our straps out of the hull of the jet ski, we got right into making some little aluminum brackets to hold our water box in. Bingo. All right, we got our little can down in there. I'll probably rotate it out that way to match up with our outlet of our bread box. That looks pretty good. Now I had to put a little spacer behind them so that I had room for my nuts. It'd be a little tough to replace these straps one day, but not impossible. So yeah, awesome. Now we just gotta plumb it. I just have it tacked right there too, because I don't know exactly where I want it. I also need to check against the bulkhead, but it's only tacked in two spots. We can kick it back, no problem. So I decided after mounting up the muffler that I would do the plumbing as the final assembly of the boat. No reason to do it now, just to undo it. So we moved back up to the front of the boat and did our final welding here on the nose, and then smoothed it all off with a flap disc. Check out how majestic the Suburban looks in the background. I can't wait to finish the boat so I can get cranking on that thing. Well, after a whole buttload of welding, we got the front nose all done and gone over with the flap wheel. It takes a while. It took me probably 2-3 hours to do this, but we have a problem. Can you see it? Right there. We got a crack forming. Did it on this side and that side. So I don't want the whole thing to do that. This probably realistically isn't a problem, but well, if I let it be, it would eventually. So I tried re-welding it once, but I think I'm gonna have to get in there and weld at least a majority of the backside of this thing, and then have to flip it back over, gouge this, weld this crack, smooth it off. A little bit of a pain. I was really hoping not to have to weld the inside of this thing, because it's now gonna be up in here. So that's not something I look forward to at all, but this did turn out pretty decent. Not perfect though. Kind of wavy, but who cares? With the nose all welded up and smoothed off, we moved back into the back of the boat to cut out this sweet little battery box here. Voila, our little battery mount. So this guy is gonna go right there. Should be plenty of clearance all around it. Like I said, this is the exact battery, but these other batteries the same height, and it seems like that should be no problem. Maybe we'll move it in a dandy spot. can't see anything. Yeah. That's what I get for trying to make a big weave. So with the battery box finished up, that kind of marked the end of our accessories that we needed to mount into the engine bay, including our fuel tank that we put in and that muffler mount. So that meant we had to go ahead and pull out the 701 once again and get this boat flipped over and ready to attach our UHMW. Well, as you can see, we can get the engine out like that, but the only thing was we didn't have the drive shaft hooked up, so that could be a problem still. I don't know. Now's the hard part. Trying to get this engine off the hoist really sucks when it's over the boat like this. We did actually find that dropping the boat away from the hull was the best move. So we have our 3/8 thick or 1/2 inch thick UHMW up here. Got it strapped on just to kind of form it to the bend. Now Jetstream was nice enough to put some bends in it, some contours to make it a little easier, and then they've already got it cut out up here so that you can hopefully nicely form it to the hull. So this is definitely one of the parts of the project I've been worried about doing. It just seems daunting. Anyway, we spent $200 in hardware and parts. So we got a 5/16 18 drill tap. Never actually got to use these drill bits. Pretty excited to try it out. Should work out pretty good here. And then we've got 2 sticks of Sikaflex in case we need that. A whole boatload of hardware. Sealing washers, which I've never used before. They're stainless steel with some sort of rubber backer. And most importantly, our countersink. These are the larger ones. Somewhere around here I've got the small ones. These guys are for the plastic. So we also have countersinks. So a lot of money spent on this portion. Not a lot. It was like $200 for a bunch of hardware and some drill bits and some countersinks. So the best process that I found to do this was to run, well, first actually you need to mark out exactly where your stringers are on the bottom side of the boat onto your plastic, and make sure you don't drill into the stringer because you need to be able to get to the back side of the bolt. Once I figured out where I wanted all my bolts, I made a nice little pattern. I went way overboard with the bolts. You do not need to use nearly as many as I did. And I used 1.5 inch long countersink bolts. You only need 1 inch long, I think. That's what I ended up finishing off the boat with when I realized I came up short. But anyway, I would drill with the 5/16 18 combo drill tap, followed with a countersink pass in a separate drill. And then lastly, I would run the countersunk bolt in with the impact through the plastic and the aluminum. And then of course, once we'll flip it over later, we got to put on the sealing washers and then lock nuts. Not a hard process, just took a lot of time. Well, in that last clip, I stayed up till midnight. It's now the next day. And I drilled and tapped 100 holes in the bottom of my boat. Looking pretty good so far. Pretty happy with it. Obviously, you have to mark out where your stringers are so you don't end up putting bolts in there. And yeah. But the issue is, I didn't even think I would use 100 bolts, but 100 bolts didn't even get us halfway, or maybe right about halfway. So I'm waiting for some more to show up in the mail so we can finish out the front of that. But while I was waiting on that, I revisited my stomp grate here and did a little finalizing. So we countersunk our holes for our intake mount, so those should sit pretty flush in there. And then we tack welded on this piece, which is kind of our water guide. So you can see here the final vision of how water is going to flow through this thing. It should come right along here, get all disrupted by all these bolts. Just kidding, these should be pretty flush. We're going to have a little bit of Nicosil in here, try and fill that little gap. And then flush mount bolts will flush off the weld here, and then water should flow right down into our intake, into our prop. And then back here is stomp grate rendition number 1. The 2 centerpieces, I think I showed you guys this all before when I built it. 2 centerpieces there will be the actual stomp part. These 2 are solid mounted, so you get hung up in some seaweed or whatever, they'll be a whole linkage system here, but press that a few times and ideally that all junk falls out and you can keep on boating without having to get in the water. And this is also going to double as our pump protection plate, ride plate combo type deal. So, all right, big moment here. We are putting in our last bolt. Oh yeah. Oh, that's perfect. My battery died. Sweet. So with all the hardware in place, we set to filling in the little gap here in between the plastic sheets on the nose of the boat to prevent any water disruption with a plastic welder. All right, now that we're finally getting down to the tip of the boat, the nose, whatever the technical term for the front of the boat is, you would think after spending the last 5 months building a boat, I would understand the terminology used for boat and sides and front and back. I don't know, and I don't really care. But what I do know, sort of, don't even know this, but I figured out plastic welding, sort of. So I got this big joint here. This is the worst part of it. Super wide. That's like 3/4 of an inch. We got some filler. This all came as a kit from Harbor Freight with this little iron, which is basically just a soldering iron. I found it best if you lay it on its side like this. Kind of melt it off the stick, push it on there, and kind of backfill the hole in. Really slow process. I've been at this all freaking day just to do this one joint, but it's working pretty good. I'll show you guys later how it turns out, of course. I'm pleasantly surprised. Haven't burned myself yet either, but I still have about 2 inches of hole to fill, so it's probably coming. You can see he's really just kind of smeared around. The base material, the UHW, does not really melt. Oh, there goes the old ventilator. Quick on. Yeah, base material doesn't really melt, so this is just kind of sticking down in there and sticking to it, not really, tying in like a steel or aluminum. It's kind of fun though. I've never tried this before. I've got this very aggressive rasp. I don't know if this is an actual blacksmith rasp. I have no idea where it came from, but it eats this stuff away. Nice. So I'm just knocking down all the excess. Although I do want to leave a little bit of a high profile because this is kind of a consumable, basically. It's kind of fun, actually. That we are done with the plastic, at least on the bottom side. I think the seam here turned out okay. It just kind of looks like, I mean, the boat's been used, you know. I'm sure the rest of the plastic will start looking like this pretty soon. But just filled in that gap so the water should flow a little smoother and hopefully we won't have any issues. I also went through and flushed off all of our bolts or screws here, so hopefully no obstruction there. Now, a few things I learned when I did this. A lot of people told me, and I did listen to this, to start in the center, work your way kind of both directions and out. I chose to do it around the pump first because that's super important, but I got it to sit really flush. I'm really happy with how it turned out, but I do think I went overboard with the bolts. I should have taken out, I should have only done like every other one of these here, and around the pump, I don't regret that because that's going to be probably a high hit area. But really, I think spacing about 4 inches apart, 2 rows, and then a center row, and that is probably more than enough for most people. And of course, you want to be near the intake. Now, I ground off around the intake here so the water can flow right in. We might get a little bit more aggressive with that, I don't know. I think I probably should do this too, but I'm going to leave it for now and see what happens. A lot of people put chimes like in this area. We might end up doing that. I don't know. We'll see. You guys will for sure find out. So I think with that, we're ready to flip this thing over and maybe start final assembly on the engine and stuff. All right, we got this thing flipped over for hopefully the last time, at least for the initial build. Anyway, you can see how many holes I put in this thing. Holy cow, literally. All the way up. That's kind of scary, isn't it? We're going to need a bilge pump. Anyway, now that it's flipped over and ready to go, the next thing I want to do is the swim deck. Probably the last thing we're going to do in this video. But of course, it's not going to be simple. And we need to trim it up a little bit to fit in there. And then I actually want to cut out at least a majority of this space so I can remove a section and get in here to service my pump, get the pump mounts, all that jazz. Make life easier in the long run, I think. And then we also need to, before we even do that, I need to cut out a support to go here, some sort of little gusset guy plate here, gusset up to here to support our pump. I don't want that snapping off. Actually, this would be our nozzle. Well, pump's in there, but nozzle. So let's go to the plasma and start cutting out those pieces, huh? All right, well, we got a win and a loss. The win, that looks freaking sick. Perfect font for that. Just had a big open spot, so I figured something cool would be there, and what's cooler than your engine size? So hopefully I always keep a 701 in this thing. Anyway, yeah, issue is gonna do a little spacers. So I can machine some spacers, or temporarily for now I could use nuts, but we'll turn down some stainless. Probably about a 1/2 inch, and that should keep us nice and straight. So now we need some sort of temporary spacer, and then we'll figure out how we're going to gusset it up to there. I think this might be my new favorite part of the boat. It's a shame it's going to be covered up here soon, but it's 701. Looks sweet. That is a perfect font for that. Did a little bit of tricky work on these brackets here. It's the only part that's a shame about this being a kit, is I haven't really gotten to do a whole lot of custom fabrication. It's just welding things together that were designed by someone else. And, I don't know. Just in the spots like this where I can put my own little touch on it. It's kind of nice, even though we are going to cover it up a lot, which sucks, but oh well. Hopefully in the interior we could do some more custom stuff. So like I said, now that we got it, cover up our pump support here, which is a shame. I do really like that. Before we put this on, though, we did a little work. I really kind of wanted to be able to reach up in here and get to the top of the pump, although I didn't get myself a huge access panel. I could still get my hand down in there and do some work, which is great. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing this. I actually thought about remaking this piece and doing away with this. I don't think it looks the best, and I welded some tabs underneath here so I could tap these guys into them, and it warped the crap out of this thing. So I had to cut there because this was all Rainbow Road looking. So cut there, and we did actually get it lined up pretty good. It's looking pretty flat. We're gonna have to weld down here. I don't know what the hell we're gonna do in there. That really should be welded too, because in theory, that might be down in the water. So I almost wish I didn't weld this in, because now I can't get to that. But we did get this piece welded in as well. Welded out, not so great. Been having a ton of issues with the XRA. I'm not usually one to get frustrated with welders. If your welder's not welding right, there's a reason. It's not just possessed, although sometimes it's easier to believe that. And this time my reason was, I think I explained this in the first video. This is a push-pull gun. It has 2 feeders. Feeder in there, and then that pushes. And then you have a feeder up here in your gun, a little tiny guy, that pulls. I had been messing with the tension of this a bunch, thinking that was part of my issue. And really, it was down here. Our tensioner assembly was way backed off, so this was like not doing anything. So it was just trying to pull, which is not nearly enough. And yeah, it was making the welder work like crap. So hopefully now that we have that fixed, knock on wood, we'll be doing a lot better because I was getting a little fussy. And like I said, don't usually get fussy at welders. So let's go ahead and weld this all the way out and try not to warp the crap out of it, even more so than it already is. So it might not seem like much, but this is actually a monumentous occasion, as this is the last big panel we need to weld on this boat. And to say I'm thrilled to be done welding on this thing is an understatement. I do love welding, but this project has come with a lot of ups and downs with the aluminum process. I learned a lot, and I would certainly build one again, but I won't be doing it anytime soon. It is a lot of welding. All right, so with our swim deck for a Chihuahua maybe, with our swim deck welded in, well, not pretty all right. A little bit of spots like that could have been a lot prettier, but the rest of it did okay. I also globbed up the corners. Anyway, with that done, our pump mount done, our Lexan or our UHMW on, stomp grate, stomping. I don't even remember what else we did in this video. I think we put the nose cone on. This video has been a long time in the making, like several months, because I'm trying to jam a bunch of stuff down into one video. I really want to make this thing into a 4-part series. By the end of the next episode, that means I want this thing sitting in the water, I hope, or at least ready to go into the water. So in the next episode, we're going to seal the jet intake up. And I still need to weld that shaft out. Actually, I just remembered that. Get that all finalized. Get our propeller back in there. Everything back here all finalized. We need to make our linkage for our stomp grate. Drop our 701 back in. I know that needs a carb kit. Hook our exhaust all the way up. I think we're going to need some new tubing, although we got that pretty close. Yeah, we built the exhaust this clip. We built the fuel tank in this clip. Motor mounts. We did a lot. Battery box. So the next video will be all about finalizing as much as we can on this thing, getting it ready for the water. We need controls. We need a seat. We need a steering wheel. We need a lot still. But we're getting close, and I'm pretty happy to see that. So I hope you guys are enjoying this series. I know it's not doing super well view-wise, but I don't really care because I've always wanted one of these, so I'm going to build it regardless of how it does. And it's been a huge challenge for me. All this aluminum welding has been really tough, but really rewarding to see it come together. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please take a moment to like and comment. I do respond to every single comment on every video as of now. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think. And I do still need a name for this little guy. So, if you come up with one of those, let me know. And with that, I will see you guys on the next one. Well, hold up. I almost forgot one important thing. If you made it this far, you deserve the cost analysis. So in the last episode, we spent $2,600. Plus, in this episode, we spent $180 on the exhaust parts. We spent just under $250 on all the hardware for the UHMW and some other assorted stainless steel hardware. And then we also spent $40 on some tubing for the sending units in the fuel tank, as well as our handy dandy little screw-on cap. So let's see how math does for me. $2,650, $2,750, $2,830, $2,870 for this episode. Well, we're getting close, folks. I don't think we'll be able to keep this under 3,000 in total, as the next project or next part of this project is going to be kind of the last final things, and those always nickel and dime you in a project like this. So come back next time and see what our total cost is for jet boat. For our jet boat. I don't know why I dropped the 4 part. I don't know. All right, I'm out of here now. I'm fried. I will see you guys on the next episode.